What's up, YouTube? In this video, I'll be showing you most of the steps I took to build this folding workbench. And before we get started, this design belongs to a YouTuber named Visual Splicer. He has a couple of great videos on this build that helped me a ton, and he deserves all the credit. Link to his profile and videos in the description. And with that out of the way, let's get to work. Before we get started, we got to talk about my old station. She's the reason I decided to build Splicer's workbench in the first place. Just a couple of plastic sawhorses, 2x4s, a 4x4 3/4 inch ply with old stains, project stains on it, and loose structural pieces. I mean, you can imagine how much.
No, that's a patty.
That's it.
Can I see the sister, Daddy?
It is to set up and tear down. But, you know, she worked, and she worked well enough for me over the past 3 years. Supplies: 4-inch caster wheels, 1/2-inch washers, 4-inch lag screws, 6-inch long by 1/2-inch wide hex bolts, 2 deadbolt locks, a pack of clear furniture pads, a pack of eye-hook sets, 3-inch hinges, 3/4 inch lathe screws, 1 1/4 inch pocket hole screws, 2 and 3-inch exterior screws, and a razor blade for...
Is this a 5 o'clock free crack giveaway?
That's a 7-foot by 3-foot tabletop of 3/4 inch ply, and I used 9 2x4x10s for the entire project. Here's my leg building process. I cut the stock to 40 inches because I wanted extra room to square each end and cut to size. The total height of the workbench will be 38 inches with the wheel hinges off, and that means each leg is 37 1/4 inches. Then add the 3/4 inch ply on top. That makes 38. Here I marked spots for some 3-inch screws that I pre-drilled, 2 holes on one side and 1 on the other. These 3-inch screws will act as permanent clamps for the gluing process and will obviously strengthen the legs. I took my sweet time getting the legs as solid as I could, and that's why you see me measuring equidistant holes on different sides for maximum strength. And I'm removing the screws here and preparing to glue. Now, apparently you're supposed to smooth out the wood glue and not leave it in lines like I did here, but most of building is learning for me, so consider my lesson learned. You just want to get the legs as smooth and square as you can. I ended up cutting a few inches off each end after all was said and done, and had many attempts at getting it just right. Here I am getting a rough estimate of where the legs will live and how much of a bottom edge I'd like the table to have. It looks like I forgot the size of my tabletop, so I had to remeasure. And I ended up with a 3-inch bottom edge, which is super handy for all my clamps. And you'll see here in a moment that the legs are slightly too long and need adjustments. Just a pro tip here, always know where your pin and tape measures are. It's such a pain getting ready to do some sort of action and your tools are clear across the garage. Here we had to get the old workbench back out and set up the miter saw station. Some of these miter saw cuts you're going to see do look dangerous from this angle, and they were close, approximately 4 to 5 inches away from the blade. And of course, I'm also not wearing PPE like I should, so don't be like me. Make your cuts safe and use PPE, and take care of yourself and your appendages. Here I'm checking the level of the floor so that I can check the level of the legs. The leveler that I have is old and tends to give me bad readings sometimes, so I check level more than I probably should. Make sure to also have fun and shake your ass if that's your thing. No reason to work if you aren't enjoying it. But back to work. The stop block is a really helpful extra hand. The more you build, the more you'll find yourself making jigs or looking up Uncle Knackers from DIY for Knuckleheads, which is where I found a few quality jig builds. He's hilarious, wholesome, and helpful. Go check him out and build your own stop block. Link in the description. I'm just checking for level here one more time. I'll probably end up checking level a few hundred more times. There's no problem with it, you know, you just want it to be as square and level as you can make it, and so you just take your time with it. Here I'm framing out the bottom frame with my 4-foot square, which is a killer tool. If you don't have one and you need one, go get it. It made gridding out this frame super easy. So just marking 3-inch square there and drawing the lines to length all the way down and back up and across. Here I'm using these 2x4s to gauge the width of the frame and to find the final position of the legs. This is a top-down shot of the frame, and you can see everything is square, but the legs are still a tiny bit too long. We'll take just a few more, an 1/8 inch off here or there, and make them even, make them square, and everything will be good. I forgot to record the frame assembly and pocket hole process, so please forgive me and go check out Splicer's video to see that. The frame is on and square, and I'm making the final adjustments to the leg lengths here. Almost always pre-drill on fragile parts of wood. Almost always pre-drill generally. It just seems better in my limited experience. But I'm anchoring the corners of the frame here, and the ingrain on those 2x4s will split if you aren't careful. Here we are rounding the top edges of the legs so that they hinge properly. And I used a fishing line spool here to find the proper angles and midpoint. Then used a square to find dead center. Using the miter saw to make these cuts is a bit sketchy, so be careful and take your time. After the cuts are made, you can use any sort of sander to smooth out the edges a bit. It doesn't have to be perfect. Mine won't be perfect, you'll see here in a second. You could put it on without sanding it and it would hinge just fine. Once you've sanded to your satisfaction, we're going to want to drill the hinge hole. And you're going to want to use a drill guide to make the hinge hole as straight as you can. The last drill bit I used was a 1/2 inch, and I used 3 other drill bits to get to that point. The clamps were invaluable here, as the drill guide tended to move on me ever so slightly, but it didn't matter in the end. Clamps are your friend. You can see I'm clamping this leg to the frame and drilling out the hinge hole into the frame. Just use the hinge hole as your guide, and then assemble your bolt. And here's the bolt assembly. You want to come in from the outside with the hex bolt out, washer, another washer against the leg, a locking washer against that, and a nut to secure it. Sorry for the blown out distant visual, but we do finally get to stand up the table. And then check for level. Always checking for level. One other thing I forgot to record is this bracer. Stand the table up and make sure the legs are square. Cut the wood of your choice to the outside edge of each leg and position it to fit snugly on the underside of the frame so that it braces against the frame and gives additional support. Pre-drill and install. Now let's talk about these hinges. Make sure your legs are clamped to the frame. The outside edge of the hinge needs to be flush with the bottom of the leg. So we're going to zoom in here and quiet down and really focus, because I screwed this up off camera. You see that hinge is too far over. It needs to be pushed back and flush with the bottom of the leg. I'm sure y'all appreciate me being so humble.
My left stroke just went viral.
Admitting my mistakes on YouTube. More marking, pre-drilling, squaring, and I'm actually going to shut up for a bit and give your ears a break. If you people feel like I've earned it, or you've learned something from the channel today or been entertained, please hit that like button or subscribe. I'm going to be putting out a lot more videos in the future on all sorts of subjects, and would be thrilled if you were along for the ride. Here, I'm installing some furniture pads in between the hinges just to give them a little bit of a break. And now I'm finding the proper position to put the wheels. Have I mentioned clamping is helpful? I used the lathe screws and impact driver here, and I'm not sure why. I don't know much about either, but if you feel like educating me, I'm always ready to learn and would be happy to see your comment down in the comment section. I also made this jig, super simple. It's just a 2x4 with a 1/2-inch plywood with one screw in it so I can angle the plywood, or the 2x4 if necessary. It just works as a spacer for this wheel hinge right now. And yeah, you see I just moved it over to the other side. Now that the other wheel is installed, I had to loosen the bolt hinge a bit just for comfort. The legs were very, very stiff. And we're going to stand her up again. It's quite a bit heavier than I imagined, and without the stretcher, it was tough to keep the legs square. Everything worked though, and she felt very solid. Off camera, I actually dropped her quite a bit and thought I damaged her beyond repair. I decided to install another bracer near the wheel hinge. To do that, I had to take the wheels off. And this bracer has a 2x4 attached to it on the inside of the legs. That 2x4 will act as the stretcher's locking position. Just cleaning up a little bit here. We're about to fold the table over, or tilt the table over, and make sure everything folds properly and fits properly. No harm in checking the mechanics of everything each step of the way, just to make sure you haven't made some simple mistake you're just overlooking. Here I'm measuring for the stretcher. You want the stretcher to be as flush as possible. Get your measurements right and make as many cuts as you need until it is right. Here I'm installing some small L slots made out of a 2x4. I just used the width of a 2x4 as my guide and cut the L slot out with a jigsaw. Pro tip, make sure your L slots are facing the same way so that the stretcher can actually rest in the slots in the table when not in use. Using the skill saw here to cut out the stretcher's locking position. I'm sure there's a better way to do this, and I'm happy to hear it down in the comment section. I will be replying to every comment that's not super rude or a crypto scam. Just using a chisel here to finish the cleanup. Then we'll sand for a smooth entry. And I actually made a small mistake by cutting the 2x4 all the way through, but I ended up adding a 3/4 inch ply piece at the bottom, and it secures it just as well and looks fine, so no problem there. Installing the eye hooks, this actually took a while, but I got it right. And fighting in the blue corner, Brynhilde, the workbench. Standing in at 45 inches tall with the wheels down and 38 with them up. She stores and folds into the wall easily for your spouse's sanity and your own obsessive-compulsive disorder. If you made it this far, thanks. And if you have tips or want to teach me something, please start your comment with Chase. That's my name, and I'll make sure to get to your comments first. There is also a small treat after the fade out for all you YouTube fiends like me. In the meantime, be good, work hard, and try to learn something today. Take care.